Man, this is the truth behind the beef between 50 Cent and Steve Stoute, a.k.a. the Commissioner, Steve Stoute. Oh, man. Steve Stoute, man. Now, most people think of Steve Stoute or hear Steve Stoute and they start thinking, oh, that's that dude that was with Nas. Because that's where everybody really knew him of. He was basically a A&R or executive at Columbia who also managed rappers. Like, he helped them get deals and helped them get money, basically. And with Nas, once he saw Nas blow up the way he did, with It Was Written, Steve Stoute, the Commissioner, coming up and helping him out with that, Nas was put in a position where he made a few bucks in the game, with that. He came up doing really well, and things started to turn between Steve and Nas after the the Hate Me Now situation with Diddy and Steve Stoute. And he felt Nas should have had his back, and it's a whole bunch of stuff. But Steve Stoute's name has been in the middle of a lot of these hip-hop battles. A lot of them. And as we move forward, I just wanted to keep that in mind so you can kind of know and get familiar and be like, man, that's the same dude who was putting together the firm when Cormega had a problem basically with him, and it led to the Nas and Cormega situation, and it was Steve Stoute. He's right there in the middle. And nobody was calling him out on a lot of stuff, because he's just an executive. They're only going to go with the artist's name. So while he's still, working at Columbia, he was like, I'm going to work with this guy. I like this dude, this 50 Cent. And when they brought him the deal with Tone and Pope, because those are the guys they worked with. Tone and Pope was like, let's do this. Put this together. Let's get this done. Let's get that done, and get this beat here, and keep putting them on tracks. Had them working with like Maya and all these other people, and Steve Stoute was that guy who was business smart but talked like he was from the hood. He was the master of many faces. He was shiesty. Still is, It's just at this time, he's one of those people that if you talk to Steve Stoute, you're going to say, wow, he's an amazing, smart human being. But he's shiesty. And exactly, he's like, I don't know if I could fully trust this man. He's one of those guys. But one thing about Steve Stoute, if he tells you something, you're going to get your paper. You're going to get it. You just got to roll with him for a minute. And sometimes things not going to work out, but of course he's looking at it where he's going to make some change off of it, but he's looking at it like, I might be shiesty, I might be wrong, but whatever. We all a team, and we all gotta look. They like, dude, you the commissioner. Your job is to get me paid. Whatever you make on it, that's it. That's the deal. But I ain't on no team. You ain't my teammate. That's what they look like, man. Who's this dude? Like, what's wrong with him? So anyway, 50 gets signed to Columbia basically through Steve Stoute, liking the music and approving it. So he was like, okay, cool, this is going to be good. I like the way this music going. Plus, he's going off the strength of Tone and Pope. Now, he was branding him into a position where they're going to come out with, like, you know, this thing, this project they're doing. After the Fern flop, Nas was kind of like rebuilding his own brand and trying to come out with his own thing, you know. So Nas is doing this double CD where he did the I Am album, came out, it smashed in. Then he's got Nostradamus dropping in the same year. He's doing the 2 records in 1 year deal. So once he accomplishes that, 2 records in the same year, they got this tour going on, like Nostradamus tour, and everything's going good. He's got 50 rolling with him and all of this stuff, and things are looking up. He's getting all this promotion, and he gets shot. Columbia Records at the time was doing a lot of dumb stuff. Stoute and them, they messed up with Alicia Keys. They had a lot of different things that was going on at that time. People never knew Alicia Keys was out at that time. She was around for a minute. But they had Alicia Keys and they screwed that up. And now you have a situation where 50 Cent's in limbo. And Steve Stoute ended up leaving Columbia out of anger and frustration. Now, here's where the problems kick in at. Sorry, I got a text message. But here's where the problems kick in at. Steve goes over to Interscope and working with Jimmy Iovine. So right away, while he's working with Jimmy, and he's bringing all these contacts, sponsors, and all these people he came over there with when he left, and as he's working with Jimmy, they're trying to reintroduce Dr. Dre to the platform. Like, we're going to reintroduce Dre to to the world. So they finna come out with the Chronic 2001 or whatever. And they were looking for somebody to write the song, and then they ended up getting Jay-Z, and so things was cooking. But when he went over there, he didn't look to sign 50 Cent, who was out there making music. He could have signed 50 if he wanted to. Once Eminem decided he was going to sign 50, here comes Steve Stoute. And he was like, man, let me get my CD to... He was like, man, I already know what you can do. You ain't got to tell me nothing. He's like, you ain't got to show me. I already know what you can do. But he's like, don't sign with the white boy. You can sign with Dre. If Dre gonna sign you, that's cool. But don't sign with the white boy. Nah, I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't do that deal. And right then and there, he's kind of like hesitant. Like, what do you mean? Like, he's the one that really believes in it. Why would you try to get me to sign with Dre exclusively? He was like, oh, I would do the deal with Dre. I wouldn't do it with the white boy. So Dre didn't tell him to do it, so that's the thing. Dre didn't tell him to go out and try to see if you can get 50 to sign directly to us, like to Dre and get him on Aftermath or whatever. But he was signing to Shady Aftermath. And the problem is, and this is the major problem, is the fact that he was kind of right in saying that. What he was saying was, don't sign to Eminem, because if you sign to Eminem, you're paying Eminem and Dr. Dre. You see, you're signing to Shady, and you signing to Aftermath, and Interscope is the distributor. Now you're paying to two. If you just sign to Aftermath, you just have Aftermath and Interscope. You know, you're basically signing to another label, so you're paying two, paying Peter to pay Paul, you know, robbing Peter to pay Paul type of thing. So Steve was really telling him what was best for him, but what would have been better is to do it with Eminem, because Eminem is the one that actually believed in the project. But 50 felt a kind of way from the way he delivered it, like, you don't want to sign with the white boy. Had he talked to 50 a little different, he would have probably got a different result. So 50, you know, thinking like, yeah, whatever with this guy. So when 50 does the deal, he's doing the album, you know, Steve Stoute's hanging around because he's trying to get in there to be managed by, wants to help manage 50 Cent, but 50 already got his managers and his team that's going to be working with him. So Steve will always come up like, okay, well, your manager got something, so he knew, like, man, I got to bring something to the table with 50, or it don't make sense for me to hang around. So what he did was he brought the Reebok deal to the table, and he was like, we talking about multi-million-dollar deal. And Jay-Z's involved, and Jay-Z's finna come out with his own line of shoes. And instead of wearing Air Force Ones and Jordans and all that stuff, why do that? You can have your own name on the shoe and get paid for it. They're going to pay you for it. And he's like, believe me, you're going to get a massive check. And he's like, just give it time. Your check that you're going to get in the mail is going to be worth it. And it was massive. The Reebok deal was almost, I believe, probably about $100 million deal. It was close. It was a lot of money involved. So when they did the Cross brand with 50 and Jay-Z, that's when those two really started to vibe with one another, when they did the little commercial, because as a package deal, 50 was coming in as a new artist, even though he's been making those songs, and he's coming with the G4s, G3s, G-Unit sneakers. People never knew how much money 50 Cent was getting from Reebok to do this deal. Shoe deals are massive if you come in and you have a certain appeal and you're able to sell shoes. The S. Carter collection did well too for a long period of time, because it appealed to the crowd that was wearing those K-Swisses, and where people used to wear those instead of wearing tennis shoes. They kind of related to the S. Carter, the more laid back, dressed up type shoe. So it made a lot of sense and a lot of money for both of them, and opened a lot of doors to let them realize, like, wow, this is serious money. And these rappers could have been getting this? Why didn't they get it? You know, it was just like dumb to them. Like, wow, this didn't. So Steve Stoute, like, all right, now I brought this to the table. We finna go places. They gonna see I'm for real. And 50 was like, whatever. And they never done business again. And he was like, wow, like, he didn't even say thank you, or even like try to say, okay, well, what's the next step? What do we have? 50 already had his own team and everything else, so didn't really matter to him. 50 had opened so many other doors for revenue that his streamline was entirely different. So he was just the biggest artist in the world after that. He became the biggest selling artist, and he got a movie coming. He has the soundtrack to that movie. 50 was busy all year round. The G-Unit album, as the Reebok deal is increasing, he's steady getting checks from Reebok. And Steve Stoute is livid. Didn't like 50 Cent no more after that. Didn't. Tried to create another deal with him. Didn't work. But yet and still, his work was being sabotaged on the inside. And this leads into the problems that he had with Interscope. Is Steve Stoute's not a friend of yours, and he's an executive at Interscope. He's frowning up at you. Now he's working for Jimmy Iovine, who runs Interscope. So it's kind of like one big circle. But Steve Stoute was the major part with all the relations and all these things that was starting to happen after 50 Cent made success. See, what they do is after you become successful for like 2-3 albums, now it's going to be time for you to come for that re-up. Now they got to sabotage you so that they can bring your value back down. So that when you try to ask for something, they can say, well, you're not performing the way you used to. You're not knocking them dead, kid, like you used to do when you first came out swinging. So this is all we can offer you. And don't give you your proper worth. This tactic that wasn't going to work with 50 Cent. Just was not going to work with him. And now this deal that he was under, it was under a lot of stress and duress and what was going on. So when his contract ended, he knew that Interscope wasn't going to come back and try to make another deal, because they were like, look, we can't make a deal with 50 Cent. He's not going to work with us. He's very distorted, distrusting of the entire Interscope company. And he didn't have problems with Aftermath. He didn't have problems with Shady. All his problems was with Interscope. How did this happen? Then Steve Stoute, once 50 Cent is free agent and he decides not to sign back with Interscope, Interscope goes into this full, we support his decision, we wish him the best, because he basically sat out the rest of his contract. And it infuriated them that it got to that point where he wasn't going to put nothing else out for them. And that was his last album that he owed them. He gave it to them and was like, okay, now I am officially done with Interscope. So here it is, the final straw. And we're going to tap into the Interscope thing too, because I'm trying to tell you this story with not altering into the Interscope thing, but it's hard to do that with this. It's like you have to. So, but anyway, Steve Stoute goes out on a radio show, and when they mention 50 Cent, he goes into this, well, he hasn't done anything in a long time. I hope he's able to put out some music, that's, not with so much aggressive content. It's like people looking like, what? Aggressive content? Like, what is he talking about? This is 50 Cent. So all of this was right before his Animal Ambition album came out. And once he said that, he goes on radio and did this. It put them in a strain, basically, to where 50 was going to have to see him. It just so happened to be Steve Stoute was at that Knicks game. Y'all would have never got that footage because it wasn't meant to be on footage. He waited till after the show was over. 50 was going to approach him. He knew they were going to have to speak because he knew what it was. He knew what it was about. And I knew what that's about. 50 Cent, aggressive content. A guy who has probably the most radio or commercial success of any artist in the last 15 years. All of his songs could probably go on radio. Who couldn't make more radio songs than him? Probably Drake now. Drake is probably the best commercial rapper that's out there now. Lil Wayne wasn't that commercial. These guys made, and plus it was a different time. 2007 to now is entirely different of what was a commercial hit. You actually still was making songs back then. Now it's just some auto-tune stuff that people are rolling with. But back then, so Stoute got a warning. Like he told him, dude, you were really close to getting your A whoop. You playing with me. And he's still like, what are you talking about? Stoute still acting like he don't know what's going on. And it was like, I just did an interview, man. He's like, man, you know what you're doing. You playing with the wrong guy. You playing with the wrong one. 50 is not the one you're going to want to do this with. Because it's like, if you want it to go down, it will go down tonight in the streets. And he knows 50's for real. Like, 50's crazy. Because he's, you know, it's a whole different mentality. Steve Stoute is not, he talks street because he hung out with a bunch of street dudes, but there's a reason why people want to hurt and beat him up. He don't come off as a genuine human being. Even though he wants to come off as that, even when he doesn't, it sounds like it's fake. But he made people a lot of money. He made a lot of brothers a lot of money. Remember Jacob the jeweler? Made him some money. You know, them Jacob watches, yeah, it would have never took off without Steve Stoute. So he knows his job. I mean, he knows what he's doing to a degree, but he's shiesty, you know. So you just gotta know. Hopefully, you got some worth to him, because if not, then hey, it might not work out. But because of that, Steve Stoute has definitely been against 50 Cent behind the scenes, and now he thinks, okay, I know what I gotta do. Because 50 Cent album of Ambition to me was a great project. It had a lot of great songs. Smoke was awesome. Great production, great work, Dre songs, 50 Cent. And it shows you the music ain't changed. It's the general perception of people have changed. Their attention span is being taken elsewhere. So when 50 Cent was out, Interscope was spending money to get you to focus on whoever artist they had coming up. Focus on this artist. Focus on that artist. And they would spend their money to do it because they don't want you to pay no attention to what's going on with 50 Cent, who was doing his independently. But he's not looking at, let me sell 1 million records. If he sold 1 million, that's great. So people are like, you failed. It's like, dude, in the past 2-3 albums, he did better with his own release and getting it played at the radio stations than his last two albums by Interscope. And we're gonna go right into the Interscope thing because we'll stop this here and then we'll go right into the Interscope thing because you can't just do one without the other. It's all one big circle. I'm out.